It is Monday, March 18th. I'm joined by Noah Rubin today, as usual, live from a hotel lobby. So he's even doing the show when he's on the road. We'll be breaking down week 21, having a look at streaming schedule, player injuries, taking questions, and anything else that comes up. This is Fantasy Basketball International. This is Balls Deep.
I'm the type to get shit done. You the type to observe. March Madness on my speakers, but today's November 23rd. Got something loud in the blunt, yeah. I don't say what I want, yeah. Probably somewhere sunny and tan. Foreign women in the sun, yeah. That's all that I need. That's all that I need. That's all that I need. Got my brothers with me. Got my brothers with me, and my mama's healthy. That's all that I need.
Welcome to the Balls Deep podcast, part of the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam King, with a cat behind me. At Adam King 91 on Twitter is where you can find me. At Noah Rubin 22 is where you can find my host, Noah, with a noticeably different background. Thank you for making the time to come on despite not being at home.
Oh, goodness, Kingy. Half the time I'm doing this, I'm traveling and not away from home. So no problem at all. It's always fun just being able to talk fantasy. And the nice part of it is that you don't really have to be in an office to do it or at a certain spot to do it. You can do it from, internationally, you literally do it from a totally different country. So
Yep,
it's a nice perk of it. So yeah, doing it from a hotel lobby today, not far from the beach, but because there's basketball to talk about, I'm not sitting on that beach. So we're here.
No. Week 21. So fantasy, surely everyone's in their fantasy playoffs now, I would think. All of the leagues I'm in are either in their last week or second last week. So very close to wrapping up. Have been getting questions from people whose playoffs are starting and their finals are in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So, plenty of playoff stuff to talk about. I've even got some slides today. I'm going to bring them up. I got bored last night. Let me share my screen. So we'll start with player injuries. Now, injuries, obviously, this time of the year, it's tough because injuries are very hit or miss with certain teams. So we've got a lot of questionable players. I'll run through the list very quickly. Questionable at this point. So this will obviously change. It's what's the time over there? 4 p.m. Eastern.
4 o'clock, yeah.
Where you are. So still 3 hours till games tip off. Questionable for tonight or for tomorrow, but on the injury report, we've got Bogdan Bogdanovic, who left last night's game early. Jimmy Butler, Cade Cunningham, Simone Fontecchio, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert, Lauri Markkanen, Matisse Thybulle, and Tobias Harris. Ruled out OG Anunoby, so they're managing that elbow injury. Al Horford, who's out for his usual second night of a back-to-back. Drew Holiday, Luke Kennard, Sam Hauser, Norm Powell, Donovan Mitchell, Bilal Coulibaly, and Kyle Kuzma. So I guess if we start with the questionable guys, there's a couple of Utah players there of note. One of note, Lauri Markkanen, who's been out for, I want to say, a couple of weeks. It feels like it's been a little while that he's been out.
Like, yeah.
I think he probably plays. The fact that they've even upgraded him probably indicates to me that he will play tonight, but I don't think this is something that's going to stick. So I don't think he's going to sort of play the rest of the season. I think he'll probably play a handful of games and that's it. What are your thoughts on Markkanen?
Yeah, I don't expect him to play a ton over the rest of the season. Like, I think it's kind of like, hey, we're not totally tanking and just not playing him for the rest of the season. We're going to try and play him a little bit here and there. Maybe they'll upgrade him to questionable, not play him this game, play him the next game. This is just me speculating. There's no insider information to say whether or not Markkanen's going to play. But I think it's the idea that they're not just going to totally shut him down, try and get him a few games here and there. You know, whether that's important to get reps with some of the younger guys as well, or just to keep the league off their back a little bit. I don't think he'll play much over the rest of the season, but at least a couple more games, hopefully in this next one.
So, very relevant question here from Metalhead. Good morning. Good morning, Metalhead. Is Lowry Markkinen worth the trouble? Someone dropped him in a 10-team Lion Cat, first week of the playoffs, and I'm top 4. Will comfortably win this week by the looks of it. Look, I mean, if you can grab him for this week, maybe he plays 2 games, but I'm not confident that when your playoffs start, he'll be playing every game or anything like that. But if you're going to comfortably win this week, and you want to just take a bit of a chance and maybe he does play. I haven't got their schedule for next week, but maybe he plays 2 or 3 games next week. I don't know. I have my doubts. But if you're in a position to be able to just grab him and see what happens, then I'd probably consider it.
Yeah, and the good thing with them is that they do play 4 games this week and 4 games next week. It looks like just one back-to-back during that stretch, and it'll be this Wednesday and Thursday. So there won't, outside of those games, there won't be the back-to-back excuse to keep him out of the lineup, and just the volume of opportunity. Like, I seriously doubt he plays in 7 or 8 games, but if he plays in 4 or 5, like, you might as well pick him up, especially in a 10-team league, and he's sitting on your waiver wire. If you're top 4, it's comfortably going to win this week. All those things just kind of factor in to make me say, yeah, no, I'd add a guy that talented if he's sitting on the waiver wire.
Yeah. So there's a few Celtics on this list, and I think this is going to be the case for the rest of the season. They're so far ahead that they just don't need to play their guys every night. So as I said, we've got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum questionable for tonight. Horford, Holiday, and Hauser ruled out. It's a shame Hauser went down last night. How many threes do you think he might have hit?
My goodness, Keeney. It ended up working out okay, but I needed in a playoff matchup, the only one I'm still in, it's my home dynasty league. Threes, points, and free throw percentage was close. I just needed to win one of those, and he streamed in, or I guess not streamed in, he had both, Duncan Robinson and Sam Hauser. I'm so glad that I won free throw percentage, because between the two of them, I mean, that's 17 threes that they hit. There was no chance of me winning that. So it ended up working out okay because the free throws, like, was sweating it out at the end. But yeah, no, it does stink for everyone else. I mean, it wasn't, it was over at that point that the threes didn't matter. But yeah, he hit 10 of them. Who knows how many more he would have hit with the way that the game was going. Like, they may have just left, because it's not like, oh, like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Okay, guys, like, we're up this much. Like, let's just sit you down for the rest of this game. Like, you might as well let Sam Hauser go out there and try and break a record. So I don't know. Could have been fun.
Yeah, I reckon they would have let him go for it, because he's not a guy that plays heavy minutes on a nightly basis.
Right.
So they would have just said, just keep going. We're winning by that much. Let's see how many you can get. And he ended with 10, but he left sort of midway through the third quarter, I want to say, or early in the third quarter.
May have been.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was, because I remember looking at it. And so I think, I reckon he could have got to 15 or 16. Maybe, but anyway, it wasn't to be. So he's now out with an ankle injury. But as I said, I think this is just something we're going to see. I think we're going to see the Celtics resting guys, which I guess for me, so I'm going to bring up this question because this actually relates to me as well, from Brian B. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Noah and Kingy, playoffs start today. Should I drop Brandon Miller? I already have OG and Kobe both out tonight. Available to pick up for me is LeVert, Neesmith, Amen, and Hendricks. So I actually have this problem in one of my leagues where I'm in the second last week. So there's 4 of us left. So semifinals. I have Brandon Miller on my team, but I also have Porzingis in my IR spot. And I'm debating whether – now, this is an 8-team league that I'm talking about, so it's very shallow. I'm debating whether to drop Brandon Miller and play Porzingis tonight. My concern is that, yes, Porzingis is going to play tonight, but they play Detroit, I think. I'm pretty sure it's Detroit. So he might only need to play 22 minutes, 24 minutes. And I think they have a back-to-back this week as well.
They do. So
if I activate him and drop Brandon Miller, am I dropping a 2-game player? So Brandon Miller, the Celtics, and the Hornets only have 2 games this week, to bring in a player who might also only play 2 games, because there's no guarantee that Porzingis plays every game this week. I could almost guarantee he doesn't play both games of the back-to-back. So that's a sort of a conundrum for me as well. So what are your thoughts here? Would you be dropping Brandon Miller with only 2 games? Is his upside high enough to warrant holding through a 2-game week?
I don't think so. I think especially in the playoffs and especially in your situation where you're activating Kristaps, like I would say you're getting at least 2 games out of Kristaps and potentially a third, because I don't think that he would, if he sat out yesterday, plays today, I think it's then Wednesday that they play again, and then they play the back-to-back on Friday and Saturday. I think that's the way that the schedule looks. So I would assume he plays Wednesday and then one of the games on Friday, Saturday. So that's probably 3 games out of Porzingis over 2 games over Miller. So I would be fine with that situation. And then you mentioned it's against Detroit with no Al Horford, no Drew Holiday, and potentially no Tatum, Jaylen Brown. So that could force them to, even if he only plays 25, 30 minutes, like rely pretty heavily on Kristaps as the number 1 scoring option. So he could end up having a big night still. And I like that over what Brandon Miller can give across 2 games. So that's what I would be doing. And as far as Brian B's question, available to pick up, he said could be Karis LeVert, which could be pretty good with Donovan Mitchell out for this game. Aaron Nesmith, a guy who's been really good all season. And I think he had like an injury where he missed a few weeks, came back first game, like 4 games were pretty bad. Last 4 games have been really good. Amen Thompson, who's been starting, and then Taylor Hendricks, who also has been starting. So 4 pretty decent options there that I would potentially consider dropping Brandon Miller for maybe all 4 of them, just because of the 2-game week and just trying to stay alive in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think about those 4 players that he mentioned?
Yeah, I think LeVert, I added LeVert last night.
Okay.
Nesmith, I considered him, so he was available as well. It was sort of out of those 2 guys that I was looking at. Amen Thompson wasn't available, but I would probably have him over Miller this week. Hendricks would be the only one who's maybe a no, just because Markkanen might be back tonight.
And I don't think I've been super impressed with what he's done. Like he's been good, but I don't know if it's that's fair.
Yeah, so he'd be the only one I'd maybe question, but the other 3 I'd probably have over Brandon Miller this week. Moving on to the stream or stream targets, but having a look at the schedule for this week. So as we said, Charlotte and also Dallas have 2 games this week. So if you are rostering anyone, I'd say anyone not named Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, maybe Miles Bridges, I'd probably be dropping anyone. If you're in the playoffs and you need to win, I'd probably be okay moving on from anyone other than those 3. Anyone else for you that you would hold through a 2-game week on those squads?
I think it would depend on the other options there. Like on the waiver wire, how deep the league is. I think you could consider Daniel Gafford.
Yeah.
But I think that for the most part, like it is definitely those 3. And maybe it is a situation where you don't necessarily drop them yet, but kind of drop whoever else as like the situation kind of occurs where you need to stream somebody else. Like definitely don't hesitate to drop anybody. And I probably wouldn't hesitate to drop Gafford if I needed to, but he's another guy that I think would be probably fine to get 2 games out of, especially if you're really looking to help your field goal percentage, blocks, and rebounds. Like obviously he's not giving you pretty much anything else, but if you really need help in those categories, I think he's a guy to hang on to.
So we've got 12 teams with 4 games this week. Boston, Cleveland, Detroit, Golden State, Indiana, Miami, Minnesota, New Orleans, Philly, Portland, Sacramento, Utah. Then obviously 2 with 2 games, and the remaining 16 teams with 3 games. Atlanta, Brooklyn, Chicago, Denver, Houston, Clippers, Lakers, Memphis, Milwaukee, New York, Oklahoma City, Orlando, Phoenix, San Antonio, Toronto, and Washington. So based on that, I've come up with some stream targets. So these are our 4-game teams. I thought we'd just focus on them and look at some streaming. Boston, we have talked about Boston a little bit. I had Cornette on here because I knew Horford was going to rest tonight, and I'm actually surprised Porzingis is playing against Detroit. I thought they'd just give him another night off, but I'm happy he's playing because I can activate him. Cornet, I think, probably still could have value against Detroit because, like I said, Porzingis might only play 20 minutes. 22 minutes, depending on the score. And he's also coming off a hamstring injury, so they do want to ease him back in. Sam Hauser, he's been ruled out since I did this list, so we can forget about Sam Hauser. Peyton Pritchard would be the other one there with Drew out tonight. Derek White probably misses a game somewhere this week. He was out last night. So anyone else in Boston worth looking at?
No, but I think that Pritchard is definitely a guy that would be fairly high priority as a streaming option, just because, like we already talked about, Boston is without Drew Holiday and Al Horford tonight, and then potentially Tatum and Brown. I wouldn't say that that's a guarantee, but Peyton Pritchard off the bench in their last game had 13 assists. And before that, like, he always seems to do well in those situations where they're resting guys. And because they have another back-to-back this week where they're probably going to rest a few guys in the front end, a few guys in the back end, he's going to play big minutes in 3 of the 4 games this week, except maybe that one on, I think it's Wednesday, where there is no back-to-back interfering with that. And then, he may not play a ton, but who knows? It's Boston. They may just blow him out. I don't even know who they're playing. So let me double check who they're playing before I say it. They might just blow somebody out. It's the Bucks. So maybe they won't just blow somebody out, but for the other 3 games, Pritchard should play big minutes, and he is generally productive in those situations where they're resting guys. So I think he's a guy that I'd definitely be like, if we're making like a tier list as far as who should be the highest priority streamers this week, I think Pritchard is near the top of that. And
they do also have Detroit twice this week, so that lends itself to those fringe guys.
Yeah. Chicago's not as enticing of a matchup, but it doesn't have to be a blowout for Pritchard to do something.
No. Cleveland, so as I said, Donovan Mitchell ruled out for tonight. So I've got Karis LeVert sort of top of my list there. Sam Merrill and Isaac Okoro. I think all 3 of those guys could have value this week.
Yeah, it hasn't been super consistent recently. I know, especially like for Merrill, some nights he hits a bunch, some nights he doesn't as far as threes. But yeah, all 3 will have upside when Donovan Mitchell's out.
On Detroit, I've put Isaiah Stewart. If you want to pick him up, I'm not picking him up, but I just had to come up with a third name. Simone Fontecchio, who's now questionable tonight, so I probably wouldn't be adding him unless we get word that he's going to play. And Evan Fournier, who has reappeared for some reason. I think he had 18 points. If you just need points and threes, it appears like they're going to give him some minutes. Cade is out. He was out, wasn't he? I said. Is that what I said? Out
he is questionable.
Questionable. Okay. So, if he misses, then there's certainly value to be found. Anyone else in Detroit for you?
No, not really. I mean, Fontecchio I do like, but obviously I think you had him as questionable as well. So if both him and Cade are out, then are we streaming Evan Fournier in 2024? Like maybe, which is pretty insane. There's nobody else there that I feel really good about. I mean, we've seen Marcus Sasser have some good games. If Cade is out and Fontecchio's out, like I would assume he's going to play big minutes. And that's maybe a guy I would consider in like a deeper league where there's not as many options on the waiver wire, but that doesn't feel like a safe move to me.
Golden State, Chris Paul, Trace Jackson-Davis, Andrew Wiggins. No real injuries in Golden State at the moment. Fairly clean in terms of the injury report. Just bringing up Trace Jackson-Davis's game log, though. So he's played at least 20 minutes in 4 straight games, scored double digits in all 4. In that time, he's had 6 blocks. Is that 28 rebounds? So I don't mind him. He's not starting every game. He has started a couple of games, so he's more of a spot starter at this point. But Chris Paul, we know exactly who he is, what you're going to get. Assists and steals. Wiggins, a little bit hit or miss, as he has been all season. But Jackson Davis is the interesting one here. Is he someone you think could have value this week?
I would consider it for sure. He's not a super appealing option. I think the appeal does come from the fact that they play 4 games this week and 4 games next week. So he's a guy that's a lot of games over the course, where if you're looking at Charlotte and Dallas, like that's a 2-game difference there. So
Mm.
that's where most of the appeal comes from, as opposed to what he's actually going to do. Because like you mentioned, like he was starting for a little bit, but now he's not when Draymond's playing. So there's some appeal, but not a ton for me.
Indiana, TJ McConnell, Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Neesmith. Neesmith, he's starting to round into form, I think, after coming back from that ankle injury. Andrew Nembhard, you're really just streaming him in because he's playing minutes. He's not actually doing a lot with those minutes.
Yeah.
TJ McConnell's the intriguing one here. I think I'd even make a case for him just being someone you should roster at the moment, not necessarily just stream. I know he's only playing 20 minutes and his scoring has sort of been above average for TJ, but I just think his floor with the assists and steals is reasonably safe. So, I don't know. What do you think about McConnell?
I don't know if I'd be looking at him in a 12-team league unless it was like end of the week. I need steals 100%, like really need them. Please save me, TJ. That's probably the only scenario where I would be wanting him in a 12-team league because, yes, the steals have been pretty consistent. The assists have been good. I know he only had one in their last game before that. He had 4, 4, and 6 over the previous 3. So, yeah, we can't rely on the scoring, but it has been there pretty decently the last few games as well. So, unless you just really need the steals, I don't know if he's a 12-team guy for me, but he certainly can be useful because of his, I mean, we can call it dominance in that category.
Yeah, so I've got him. I'm just trying to think. One of my leagues is a 12-team league, and I do have him, but it is a team where I'm punting blocks, rebounds, and field goal percentage. Although he's actually solid for field goal percentage as a guard, but all I really need is assists and steals, and then points are a bonus. That's huge. So he fits my build there, but yeah. So we'll see. I'm hoping he can continue that. Over to Miami, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Duncan Robinson. I'm assuming he's probably rostered in most leagues, but I thought I'd put him here anyway. And then Caleb Martin, who's sort of a perennial streamer at this time of year, someone you can pick up. Jimmy Butler was he questionable?
Questionable, yeah.
Questionable tonight. So him being in or out obviously makes a bit of a difference there for most of these guys. Would you have I guess if we are tiering or prioritizing these guys, would you have someone at the top of that list?
I think it would be Duncan Robinson. I'm fairly certain he's been starting even with Jimmy Butler playing. So that's a nice plus there. Obviously, he's not going to hit 7 threes often, and probably not as often when Jimmy Butler is playing because he kind of moves down the offensive pecking order as far as who's going to see the shots. But he's definitely capable of providing value. And then Caleb Martin, Jaquez doesn't really do much for me when Jimmy Butler's playing. Like, I just don't see that the minutes being there.
Yeah.
Though I mean, that's okay. But yeah, Duncan Robinson would be the guy.
Minnesota. So we've obviously got Towns out at the moment. Gobert is questionable tonight with his rib issue. Kyle Anderson, I think I said, is also something, or maybe he's questionable with a shoulder injury as well. And I mean, look, God, if Anderson is out, if Gobert is out, if Naz Reid is available, he's probably not, but if he is, he has to be rostered, I think.
Has to be.
And Nickeil Alexander-Walker is probably the other one. He's been playing quite well. Not super consistent, but a lot better than he has been throughout the season. So I don't mind Alexander-Walker as a bit of a flyer there. Anyone else in Minnesota?
No, those are the main guys. I mean, Naz Reid is the main guy. I think that if he's on your waiver wire, you need to add him. I know they had the 2-game week last week, so they have 4 this week, so that's even better. So yeah, I mean, he's been balling even when Gobert has played, but with Gobert out, like, that just prioritizes me more. Like, yeah, please pick up Naz Reid if he's there. And
what about not really? Well, I guess it probably is a streaming question, but Jaden McDaniels, who has a very clear path to minutes, he has a solid role. Pretty disappointing this season, I would say. It feels like he just hasn't reached that ceiling that people thought he might have yet in his career. And with Cat out and with Gobert sort of out a little bit lately and Kyle Anderson out, feels like it's been an opportunity for him to actually step up and sort of prove himself. But he hasn't done that. What are your thoughts on him just long term? Is he someone that can he actually get to where we think he can, or is this who he is?
I think long term, like, he's still an elite defender. Like, he's going to see minutes because of that. But I mean, like you mentioned, it's a big opportunity for him. In the last 3 games, he has shot a combined 0 for 11 from 3. He shot from the field 4 for 9 their last game. Before that, 0 for 8. Before that, 5 for 17. So the offense has been rough. And of course, that really impacts a lot in fantasy if he's a really good defender that isn't getting a ton of defensive stats, because none in the last game, 2 steals in each of the 2 games before that, and then nothing over the 3 games before that. So it's a big opportunity for him. It's been pretty disappointing. Long term, I think he's just a guy that fits in well as like the last resort scoring option that's an elite defender. So is that going to be something like, I guess your question was, is he going to be what we think he can be? I'm losing confidence in that, but I still think the defense is incredible. Like, he's going to see minutes because of that, so he'll keep having chances to do so. Yeah,
it sort of reminds me, I guess, and they're probably on a similar timeline. Isaac Okoro, another guy we've sort of touched on briefly there, whose defense keeps him on the floor, but the offense is so hit or miss. And often, as we've seen in the last few games or this year even, he is an elite defender, but that doesn't always translate to fantasy. Like, he has a lot of games where he has 0 steals and 0 blocks. And for the season, he's averaging, where are we? 0.9 steals and 0.5 blocks. And that's not what you'd associate, I guess, in terms of fantasy as an elite defender, but he obviously is. But just doesn't translate that well. So anyway, it's a bit off topic, but just an interesting, because he's often drafted in fantasy leagues, but then he's just dropped. On to the Pelicans. Trey Murphy, Najee Marshall, Larry Nance. Larry Nance is off the injury report for tonight, so he was sick. So he's back. Hasn't been starting, but he's been playing closer to starters minutes than Jonas Valanciunas. Trey Murphy's been really good the last couple of weeks. He's finally sort of figured things out. He's probably got a bit of confidence after that knee injury to start the season. So I think Trey Murphy probably isn't available, but if he is, I'd be adding him. I wouldn't just be streaming him in. I'd be picking him up. Marshall is sort of just a guy you can plug in if you need some numbers across the board. But Larry Nance, what do you think about him? Like, is he someone that we could be starting most nights, or is he not doing enough just yet?
I think it depends on what categories you need help in, because just looking at it, last 2 weeks, playing 23 minutes per game with 7 points, 4.2 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.6 steals. Good field goal percentage, fine free throw percentage, doesn't shoot those a ton. So he's not giving you value in a ton of categories. Basketball Monster has him 111 during that stretch. The steals are great, but I don't know. I don't know if I'd be looking to stream a center that's getting 4 or 5 rebounds per game that's not really dominating another category. Again, unless you just really need the steals, but those are so, I guess, volatile, because, I mean, you look at the last game, he had 0. The game before that, he had 2. The game before that, he had 4, and then 1 in each of the 3 before that, 0 in the 3 before that. So those aren't super consistent. They're hard to intentionally stream outside of a few guys. So I don't know if he's a guy to be looking at in 12-team leagues.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's more out of position steals is why you're getting him, and some rebounds, but it would be nice to get more than 4 or 5. But obviously they've got a few good rebounders there on the team, and they've got Zion, who's playing a lot more point forward lately, so he's bringing the ball up a lot more. So they're just getting the ball, clearing out, letting him get some rebounds and bring the ball straight up. So Philly.
And also one more thing to add in on that, just looking at his minutes over the last few games that he's played. I played 28 minutes against the Clippers. They do have, I don't know, decent centers, but we know Tyronn Lue isn't going to be afraid to use like a smaller lineup. And then Cleveland, he only played 17 minutes. And then Atlanta and Philadelphia, he played 29 and 27. And Phillies obviously doesn't have Joel Embiid. Atlanta has Clint Capella, kind of like minutes limit, Noah Kongwu. So I don't know. I think it might also be a little bit matchup dependent there.
Yep. So they've got Brooklyn this week. Brooklyn tomorrow. So they obviously have Claxton and Sharp. So they've got a bit of size. Then they play Orlando. You really don't know who's going to be their center on any given night. So could be a good game there. Miami, who have got Bam. Detroit have got Jalen Duren. So it's possible that he could play decent minutes in 3 of the 4 games this week, but it'll be dictated, I think, by which team is controlling the game and then whether they decide to go small or play with a bigger lineup. So no certainty by any means. Over to Philly, Kyle Lowry, Kelly Oubre, Nick Batum, Paul Reed, if he's available. I don't know if he's still available in some leagues. He might be. Kyle Lowry has been okay since coming to Philly. I think he's starting. He's playing pretty big minutes. He's generally getting you assists and steals. I know there was a game that I streamed him in last week. Where is he, Kyle Lowry? And he basically did nothing. But other than that, he's been relatively solid. So more of a specialist kind of streamer, as is Kelly Oubre, points, threes. He's been getting some steals as well. Anyone else in Philly, or what do you think about these guys here?
Yeah, I think Oubre is a guy I'd be looking to stream regardless. If he's still on there on the waiver wire, definitely interested. Batum is dependent on whether Tobias Harris plays. Because if Harris is back and Batum's back to the bench, I don't know if I'm super interested in him. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get. And then Kyle Lowry, not really there for points, but he had 6 boards, 7 assists, 3 steals in their last game. So I guess if you have Draymond Green on your team as well, those two will kind of mesh together and give you value in the same categories. If you're punting points, that's great. But I don't know. Philly's not super exciting. I guess they have a couple guys, but it's kind of hard to I guess also predict game to game who the random guy is that's going to be kind of giving you numbers. I mean, just looking at it, Campaign had 10 points, 4 assists in the last game, like Paul Reed had 11 and 8. But Mo Bamba was starting, had 3 points. So, I don't know. Not a ton of reliable guys outside of Maxey there.
Onto Portland. Delano Banton is still a thing, apparently. We sort of thought that had come to an end, but no, they've been rolling him out there. So Delano Banton, Jabari Walker, who is playing today, Matisse Thybulle, who's questionable, I think I said. You're really just streaming him in, we know, for blocks and steals, but questionable with an ankle injury. Is Banton here to stay for the rest of the year? Like, is this a thing now?
Yeah, I did the waiver wired column for Roto World. I guess it was last Thursday going into Friday, and I had Banton as a guy to drop, and then he's played really freaking well since then because I assumed that, hey, Scoot is back and starting. He's just not going to start on back-to-back so they can manage his minutes, but that wasn't the case. They actually started him, played him a bunch of minutes, and then in the 2 games since then have said, hey, we're actually not going to play him a ton of minutes, which is just very confusing. And I think there was actually a question in the chat about that. So
there is, yeah.
There wasn't anything like super clear other than, hey, we're just going to kind of manage his minutes. So I don't know if maybe like his body didn't respond well after they played him big minutes, but they're still going to try and play him. I don't know. It's weird, but I think with the way we've seen Portland manage injuries over the last couple of seasons, I thought that would be a situation where they'd say, hey, Scoot's going to play a ton. Obviously, if he's dealing with an injury, they're not going to force it, but I don't know. I think Banton's a guy to hang on to until he or they kind of say, hey, we're going to actually play Scoot now. Or, I mean, even when that happens, we could see them say, hey, Anthony Simons, you've played really well this year. Like, don't get hurt. We need better lottery odds, all the other reasons. So it's Scoot and Delano Banton starting. So, yeah, I think he's a guy I'd be holding on to. So I was dead wrong in my column saying to drop him. And yeah, I'd be fine holding on to him.
Yeah, it's interesting in Portland, and I mean they're one of those teams that we can't really trust. But I pulled up Scoot's box scores here. So yeah, we've got a question from Gurkham. Do you know why there's a minute restriction for Scoot, even though he played 30 minutes after returning from his injury? So I know there was a back-to-back, so that would have figured him to 2 of those games. So he played. They played Atlanta and New York back-to-back. So he played 18 minutes and 26 minutes. Then he only played 24 minutes the next game against the Pelicans, which wasn't a back-to-back. So I guess, yeah, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at someone that's going to play 25 minutes a night or 30, 32 minutes a night? Unfortunately, I don't think any of us know the answer at this point because I think Portland are just doing what they want to do. Maybe they played him that 33 minutes and he just pulled up a little bit sore or something. So maybe they just went, okay, we'll ease you back a bit here. We're just going to play you 25 minutes a night. So if you've got him, I'd probably just hold him at least for tonight and see what the minutes look like. If it's around that 25 again, then he's probably someone that you could consider dropping because that's probably something that's going to stick for another week or two because that would indicate that maybe this is related to that injury that he had. So, but yeah, on Banton, I think he's probably someone that we just roll with until his minutes fall away. But he's been really good. So over to Sacramento, very little in Sacramento in terms of streaming. I had to really scrape the bottom of the barrel here to come up with names. I've put Keegan Murray if he was dropped because he's had a pretty bad stretch. So if he was dropped, I'd consider just picking him up and seeing if he can turn things around. But he's probably not available in most competitive leagues. Kevin Huerter, who's, yeah, look, I mean, he's playing good minutes, but he's just not doing much with it. And Keon Ellis, who's really just a defensive streamer. So his minutes aren't super high, but he's getting some defensive stats. So if you just need those, I'd consider him. Kevin Huerter would be really desperation. Anyone in Sacramento excite you?
Not from a fantasy perspective. I think I am excited about Keon Ellis, though. I don't know, like you mentioned, like the defense is what's getting him on the floor. I think it was 2 games ago. 3 games ago, he started in place of Keegan Murray. 2 games ago, he started in place of Kevin Huerter because both of them were flip-flopping availability. Last game, he came off the bench because both were back, but Huerter only played 16 minutes, and Keon Ellis played 23 minutes off the bench. 29. Had 2 steals and a block. Again, didn't give much else, but I don't know. I think that's kind of exciting, the fact that this kind of relatively unknown player is taking over as the, I guess, not the starting. Well, we'll see what happens. Maybe he takes over as a starting shooting guard at some point, but is just another valuable piece for Kings team. So I think that's kind of fun. But unless you really need the defensive stats, then yeah, no, I don't know if I'd be interested in streaming him or anybody else. And Huerter is pretty scary that he only played 16 minutes and didn't score. So
finally, Utah, again, a team that are hard to trust at the moment. Walker Kessler, Taylor Hendricks, Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn started the last game and they moved Sexton to the bench for some reason. Sexton was still the far better player in terms of fantasy. So we're not dropping Colin Sexton just because he's moved to the bench. Any value in these guys here? I know Kessler's been pretty disappointing this year. He still has that upside to give you 3-4 blocks and 10 rebounds, even in 18 minutes. So someone to stream in. And as you said, Hendricks hasn't been super impressive the last little bit. And with Markkanen potentially back tonight, I'm not sure I'd put too much faith in Hendricks.
Yeah, I don't think any of these guys are super appealing to me because I don't know if this was actually officially said or it's my hypothesis. I think that they moved Colin Sexton to the bench because Jordan Clarkson was out and they wanted some extra offense off the bench. So they started Chris Dunn. Sexton ended up playing 30 minutes to Dunn's 24. Chris Dunn's a guy that you like a Matisse Thybulle. You need steals. Okay, Chris Dunn. He's probably going to get him no matter how many minutes he plays. Hendricks is a guy I'm interested in, but if Markkanen's back, then I'm no longer interested in him. And then Walker Kessler, same thing. He started in their last game John Collins was out, but John Collins was literally out for rest on the second night of a back-to-back. So he's going to be back for this game. So he's not a guy that, like, Kessler's probably going to go back to the bench, which is very disappointing that's just how it's been this season. But yeah. I think that's just kind of not much in Utah. I mean, like a lot in Utah, but not much.
Yeah. A little bit like Memphis. Like there's stuff there, but knowing who to target on any given night is tough. And if they don't play till a later game in the evening, then you can't even lock someone in before the first game of the night. So it makes it tough. So we'll just take a couple of questions and then we'll get out of here. Which two of these back end guys are droppable? DiVincenzo, Middleton, Olynyk, Keontae George, Draymond Green. I need to drop so I can put a claim on Markkanen and then open up a streaming spot. I don't know. For me, it's probably Middleton, just because I think the Bucks are going to ease him back. He's not going to play back-to-backs. So probably Middleton and maybe DiVincenzo. He hasn't been as good lately. I don't know. I just think Olynyk is solid. Keontae, I definitely wouldn't be dropping Keontae George because he's been really good over the last week. Draymond has been all right, I feel like. I don't have Draymond anywhere, but I feel like he's been doing Draymond things. What are your thoughts? Are there two guys here that you would drop to open up a streaming spot and claim Markkanen?
I don't think that there's two like just obvious candidates. I think it might just end up like being dependent on what category, if any categories that you're punting, or punting maybe specifically for your playoff matchup. Like if you really need the points, then maybe you do drop Draymond. But if you don't need points, then definitely keep Draymond, like that kind of thing. Dante DiVincenzo depends on if he needs points and threes. Olynyk's fairly well-rounded. Keontae George obviously is going to be points and assists with a bad field goal percentage. Chris Middleton, he only played 25 minutes, and their last game had 22 points, 7 assists. So, yes, I don't think he plays back-to-backs, and I don't think he plays more than 25 minutes in a game for the rest of the regular season. But he was still fairly productive. I don't think that necessarily is going to be consistent 22 points and 7 assists, just with a minutes restriction. But he did play pretty well, so I think he's a hard guy to drop after that game.
Yeah. Do you think Springer moves into target range with the Hauser injury? Long term, I really like Springer, but I'm still not sure that his role is going to be big enough here with Hauser out. I'd like to see it before I take a flyer on him.
Yeah, I think if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are also out, then we could see Jaden Springer minutes tonight. But those aren't long-term injuries, so it might just be a game, and it's a big maybe. So I don't think he's a guy that I would be adding pretty much anywhere. Like if you're playing in one of the 30-team leagues, then sure, go ahead and take a flyer on Jaden Springer. You might see a bunch of minutes tonight. But other than that, no.
Okay. Matt Carmody, hey guys, who would you prefer, Trey Jones or Jeremy Sochan, head-to-head points with double-double bonus? I would. Oh, man, Sochan is so hard to know what you're going to get. He's so up and down. I think I'd probably prefer Sochan. I just think he does a little bit more across the board if you're looking at a points format, because he can get you some rebounds, some defensive stuff. He will score 20 points. He'll get you 6 assists. He obviously will have those games where he gets you 4 points, 3 assists, and nothing else. Trey Jones is really just assists. He does have the odd scoring sort of boost, but other than that, it's really just assists and some steals. So probably Sochan for me.
Yeah, I think the same. I'd probably be in the same boat. Just trying to quickly look for the last 2 weeks in a standard Yahoo points league. Sochan has been better, but like you said, it's never been consistent pretty much all season. And then the other factor would be it's a double-double
Yeah.
close there. I don't know if either guy is a guarantee for a double-double, and I don't have any numbers up to say how many each one has this season, but I feel like a little better about Sohan getting one. But again, could be totally off on that because Trey Jones is averaging 8 assists over the last 2 weeks. So,
Yeah.
and that's also something that's just difficult to gauge. Like, okay, who is more likely to get a double-double? Like, those are fairly random. So,
Yeah. Last question I have: Scoot and Banton on a team. Going to have to drop one. Which one? Which one would you drop here? Look, if you have to drop one tonight, it's probably Scoot, just based on what we've seen the last few games. But if you could hold them and just see what they do tonight and then make that decision, I probably would.
yeah, I think the same thing. Like short term, I would drop Scoot just because he has been on a minutes restriction. I guess the other factor would be how many moves you can make in your league, because I would assume it's like, I know I've been like saying this literally all season that Scoot is going to have like a nice run to end the season. But if he's on a minutes restriction, it's not going to happen. So they haven't been clear like, oh, he's going to be on, we're going to limit his minutes for the rest of the season or just for now, which, you know, not unreasonable that they haven't given that information. But I think it's just such a factor that's going to determine whether or not he's going to produce. So Banton has been producing. I'd just ride with the hot hand.
Yeah. All righty, so that will do it then for the show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and Noah for squeezing me into your, well, it's not really a vacation, but for your trip. We've got plenty of stuff coming out at FBI. We've got the World Cup is wrapping up. We've got playoff leagues. We've got draft-only leagues. We've got plenty of content. A few other things in the works as well. So we're B-Dub and I are talking behind the scenes, and then we'll rope in Noah and Mike once we've come up with some decisions on what we might want to do during the off season. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in. Give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe if you're following along on YouTube. If you're on Twitter, then you can't really do much other than come back, watch us again when we're here next week. We're also on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you consume your fantasy basketball content. That will do for today's show. Thank you, Noah. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.